Big question here on Morning Kickaround Monday, March 17th. We have gotten through 4 weeks of Major League Soccer. A whole month of the 2025 season is in the books. So the big question of the day, what have been your biggest takeaways of Major League Soccer's first month of play?
I think it was in evidence last night in Atlanta. And I look, there's still things percolating with Atlanta United, and they're not the finished product. And I don't want to suggest that beating Atlanta United means you're, by virtue of just that achievement, the best team in Major League Soccer. But it's pretty clear that Inter Miami's picking up where they left off last year. They're still the team to beat. Now, of course, they didn't win the championship. They got knocked out in that round against Atlanta United over two legs. Like, they obviously, knockout soccer was their problem last year. But if we're talking about the regular season, they're unbeaten. They've won 3 in a row. Now, maybe they haven't beaten anybody that you would like, oh, that's an MLS Cup contending team, right? They drew with New York City FC on opening weekend, a game they probably should have lost.
Yeah. They've been putting themselves in bad positions and still getting results.
Yeah, they beat Houston on the road without Messi. They beat Charlotte at home without Messi, and then they do what they did last night against Atlanta United. Again, it's not as though they look unstoppable. There are flaws in that team, but they seem to figure out a way. They seem to have a knack for getting results in games where they aren't necessarily playing all that well. And I think that's the sign of a pretty incredible team, at least over 34 games. And it remains to be seen how many games Lionel Messi plays or how many goals he scores. But they have other weapons in that team. They have other, he didn't score on the sequence, but I watched Jordi Alba pluck a volley out of the air and nearly put it on target. And I was like, that is not normal skill. Normal human beings cannot do what and he's just Jordi Alba. I mean, yes, he's an incredible player and he's got the resume, but when you think of Inter Miami, that's not the first team you go to for that kind of volley. It's, okay, yeah, of course he can, but wow, that's the kind of level that they bring to the table.
And that's kind of the power that Messi brings, is the other players that are along with them would be the headline banner player. Like the fact that Busquets, Suarez, or Alba are even in the league. If they're on any other team, their name would be up in lights. But Messi's power is so. And it seems like the players, like they retooled. We had MLS experts, Goss and Bogert on doing the preseason, previews. And they weren't quite sure. They weren't nailed on as to where this Inter Miami team would be. There was a lot of bit part players or role players last year that did very well and left. And it seems like those squad player replacements are going to fit the bill in a Miami and have done so at least so far.
The winning goal came from Fafa Picault, a very well-traveled MLS player, Fafa Picault. Who's, I don't know that he scored more than a couple of headers in his entire career, but he scores a header in that game to win it against Atlanta United. And, you need players like Fafa Picault, who probably is not going to get a ton of starts, but will be able to come off the bench and give you that energy and that experience.
I'm glad to see him return because he got injured in the first game of the season, I believe.
He did.
So
looked scary. Looked like he might be in trouble, and there he is back on the field.
So probably the second big takeaway besides Inter Miami, going west, Vancouver Whitecaps, the surprise package, undefeated, one of the few teams still battling their way through CONCACAF Champions Cup. What can you say about Vancouver Whitecaps, undefeated through 4?
Don't say undefeated. They have won 4. They're perfect through 4 games. They've won all 4 games. You can be undefeated and have gotten a draw. They do not have a draw. They are 12 points from 4 games. They're +7. They've only conceded twice so far. We've got the 4-1 win over Portland on opening day. They beat the Galaxy. Okay, maybe that's not a huge accomplishment this season, but they beat the Galaxy. They beat Montreal. Okay, again, Montreal, maybe not all that great. And they went to Dallas, and they win this weekend in Dallas. Maybe not their best performance, but sort of getting a handle on things. And it's about results. It's not always about being dominant. And again, I think strength of schedule is a thing here, right?
Yeah.
I think it's
Dallas,
you're not looking at this and going, oh, well, look at all the big time sides that Vancouver has beaten. When they play Seattle, although again Seattle lost this weekend, so they've had a rough start. But when they play Seattle, when they play, I guess, San Diego, who is unbeaten, right? 2 draws and 2 wins. unbeaten. Maybe when they play, and we're just talking about the West here. I think we know LAFC is going to be contender despite their 2 losses that they've suffered. They went to they lost at home to Austin this weekend. A little bit of a surprise there. But when they beat, say, an LAFC, then we'll be talking about Vancouver, and we'll be talking about, how whether or not they are the real deal. I think it's been a couple years now where it's like, yeah, everybody underrates Ryan Gauld. Ryan Gauld's one of the best attacking players in this league. And didn't even play in the win over Dallas because he's got a knee injury. We'll see if he can get back on the field shortly. I think Kubas is kind of underrated as a holding midfielder in Major League Soccer. I always liked Pedro Vite, the 23-year-old Ecuadorian player. We know about Brian White, got called into the national team for very good reason. Tristan Blackman's been bouncing around Major League Soccer for 4 or 5 years, got man of the match against Dallas. So, there are players you should be paying attention to in Vancouver.
And they could even go on a longer run here because after the international break, their strength of schedule in Major League Soccer, at least, isn't too stiff. They're taking on Chicago at home and then traveling to Toronto for their next 2 Major League Soccer matchups. So they could possibly rack up some more points after the international break.
Yes, and you did mention it. This is from Mike Thomas. Caps also juggling CONCACAF. Right, they didn't win in Mexico, but they got the result they needed in Mexico to advance past Monterrey, who is the monster. If there is any team out of Mexico that you would say is the CONCACAF monster, it is Monterrey. And that is an achievement that cannot be overstated for how big of a deal it is for the Vancouver Whitecaps. So, yeah, they have won 4 matches in MLS, and they've gotten past Monterrey in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. That is pretty incredible.
The third big takeaway from the first month of Major League Soccer's 2025 season: Major League Soccer is unpredictable as ever, just to the point of Vancouver being, top of the West.
Yeah.
Philadelphia is good when everyone predicted their demise. No one really knew how San Diego would fare, and they're undefeated through 4 games. So Major League Soccer, pretty hard to, stick a pin in it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Philadelphia. Philadelphia is good when everybody thought they were going to take a big step back, but then they had this weekend when they lose to Nashville, and that was not what I was expecting. And again, my man Mike Thomas, this is a reference to Philadelphia. Are we good? And then that emoji, because I'm in a MLS Survivor League with my friends over at the Best Soccer Show Patreon. Mike Thomas being one of those people. You pick a team every week. All you got to do is have that team not lose. They can draw or win, and you move on. You keep going. I picked Philadelphia this weekend. So I'm done. I'm out. I'm gonna have to buy back in if I want to keep going. And that's the thing. It's 34 match weeks in Major League Soccer, right?
That's a lot of weeks.
And if you play something like people do NFL Survivor leagues too, and that's a parity driven league. There's I don't know, we're up to 17, 18 weeks, whatever we're playing in the NFL anymore. And I don't know how deep that goes. I haven't been in an NFL Survivor league in a long time. I don't know how deep it goes. But Major League Soccer, by week 4, everybody's out. And you're going to have to buy in again and restart if you want to keep going. I mean, it is that unpredictable in Major League Soccer. And I'm always a little torn. I would love to know what our chat says about this. The people watching the show, and if you watch this later, please hit us up in the comments. Is it a good thing? Or is it frustrating, hard to get a handle on who's good and who's not, so it makes it feel like you can't follow the story? Right? That lack of predictability is a selling point for the league because they can tell every individual fan base, you've got a chance. You've got a chance this weekend, you got a chance next weekend, you got a chance to make the playoffs. And by the way, we're going to have 9 teams out of 15 in each conference make the playoffs, so you got a very good chance of making the playoffs. Like parity and making the playoffs, the bar means that everybody can think we have hope to win a title. And that's, again, locally, specifically for each club, that's a selling point. But if you're talking about the narrative of the league as a whole, if you watch the league as a whole the way I do, rather than specifically care about your team, it's like, who's good? I don't know what game am I choosing to watch each weekend? I don't know which game is going to be good or not. I have a sense, and mostly it's informed by last year, which the things change so much from year to year that you shouldn't even be doing that. That's kind of ridiculous as a mode for picking games or picking teams you think are worth watching, because the Galaxy are an example of that. right? Philadelphia reboots, looks great. Ty Baribo scoring a bunch of goals, and then they lose to Nashville, who hadn't looked very good for 2 weeks, two or 3 weeks of the season, right? You take a look at Minnesota United. Thought they would be pretty good. I guess I should have been watching Sporting Kansas City, Minnesota United this weekend because Sporting came back from a 3-0 deficit, right? It's very hard to get a handle on this league.
So parity good for those, if you're lower in the league. See, there is hope that you'll improve, but yeah, to your point, big picture, how do you form a narrative if the team is irky jerky, good one year, not the next? For folks kind of like slightly outside, if you're not a fan of like your local team, like how do you follow it? How do you know, oh, LA Galaxy are a good team? You look at the table. Oh,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
They're not a good team. Oh, this team is good, and then they're not. So people kind of develop their patterns over a couple year periods. Having one full season of being good and not doesn't kind of sink into people's heads long term.
And this is the other side of, okay, parity is enforced. It's really hard to hold together a good team, right? Because
Chicago think it's a parity league.
Well, okay. So I'm thinking about the Galaxy again, right? You said, okay, the Galaxy won a title last year. Now, look, Ricky Puig is an injury. That's not losing a player that you couldn't hold on to. That's an injury. That's something that you can't predict, and it's part of sports. But if you are a fan, let's say you're a casual soccer fan, or you're just getting into it, and you live in a metropolitan area that has an MLS team, and let's say your team has a really good season. Maybe they don't win a championship, but they have a good season. Like, oh, great! I'm following this team. I'm in. I'm ready. Let's go. Maybe I'll get season tickets. Maybe I'll take the family out to a couple games. I'm watching on television. I'm buying MLS season pass, whatever it might be. And then the budget rules, the parity-driven focus of Major League Soccer chops the roster down. That team now has to make a bunch of choices. They got some U22 contracts that are coming up. They whatever it might be. They can't fit the budget. They don't have enough GAM, and now they're not good. Or they take a massive step back. Does that guy or that woman, that person who is now interested in the league, interested in that club because they had a good season and they're local and do they stick with it? Or they go, what the heck is this? We were good last year, now we stink? Why am I going to waste time watching this? I think it's easy for us who are like passionately connected to our teams to call people out and say, oh, you're a fair weather fan, you're a glory hunter, you're not a real fan. But that doesn't help build the game in America, calling people that. They're just going to run off and say, whatever. If you don't want me, fine, I'll go do something else. I hear there's a new, I don't know, some new sport out there that I can watch instead of this. There's a cricket league in America or whatever it might be.
Or there's also the sport where you keep the balloon off the ground.
Is that a sport?
Yeah.
I played.
People are like jumping over couches and sliding over the hoods of cars to keep the balloon off the ground.
That sounds like one of those things they would live stream on TikTok and like millions of people watch it. That's what it sounds like. Have you ever seen the wiffle ball stream? There's a wiffle ball stream. Like, these guys have like built a stadium in their backyard and they just play wiffle ball all the time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But that is the first month of Major League Soccer in review. Some of our takeaways. Major League Soccer now takes a pause as we turn our eyes to international soccer and the Open Cup. So that'll probably be a lot of our show on Wednesday. Maybe we take a trip down the memory hole as well this week. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for your comments. As always, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button at Morning Kick Around on YouTube. Got a comment. It was funny. They were saying, Americans, please look up what MK Ultras means. So we already know what it means, but it's an interesting Google.
Okay, let's address this. Okay, because this has come up. You're right. This has come up in the comments. We understand what MK Ultra was.
Yes.
Okay, we do know the history of that. And I'm not trying to make light of mind control. I'm not trying to make light of what nefarious elements of the American imperialist attitude we're trying to do. Okay, look, I'm very aware of this stuff. But it's also funny. The show is Morning Kick Around, hence MK. Ultras is the name that you can apply to soccer supporters in some cultures. It just makes too much sense for us not to say MK Ultras. If you don't like it, don't self-identify.
You can just be a subscriber to the channel.
That's right. You can just be a regular old viewer or a regular old watcher of this. Absolutely.
Yeah, subscribe at Morning Kick Around on YouTube.com, at MKickaround. Follow on social media, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky platforms. morningkickaround@gmail.com is the place to write a note. And if you'd like to donate and help this program become sustainable and encourage growth, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround.
Can I also throw out a note here? Anybody who might catch this video and watch this, we need to take care of some business after the show, but we should be close to getting a podcast version available wherever you get your podcasts. Are we working on that? We're working on that. All right, so pay attention to that.
All right, we'll be back on Wednesday for some more Morning Kick Around. Until then, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.